Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk a little bit about the box office and some of the summer blockbusters during this summer that were supposed to do something and they didn't do much, you know what I mean? All right, let's start off with Ben-Hur. Well, this is the biggest so far disaster in blockbuster movies. This is the biggest box office flop of them all. Ben-Hur was an epic movie. It took 100 million to make, and it hasn't even gotten off the ground. It's probably like the Fantastic Four of 2016. It completely has collapsed. Its first weekend at the box office, 14 million is what it made worldwide. 26 million. Its budget's 100 million. This movie's very much not going to break even. Okay, it's a box office flop. We also had Star Trek Beyond, which was a little bit better. It's also a box office flop. It cost 185 million to make. 370 million is what it needed to make, and it is no way, shape, or form has been able to make it. I heard though Star Trek Beyond was a pretty decent movie, and critically, I don't think it was bashed. So it's really interesting why this movie did not rake in as much cash as it should have. From what I heard, most people said it was a decent movie, so I'm not sure why that actually happened with it. But it didn't make any money whatsoever. Ghostbusters. And Ghostbusters is another box office flop for the summer. As you can see, it cost 144 million to make, and it has not even broken even at 288 million. So it's a box office flop. Independence Day. Independence Day has actually broken even. It's gotten back its money, but just by the skin of its teeth. Its budget overall to produce was 165 million, needed to make 330 million to break even. It managed to do that, so it has made back its money according to the box office specifics. Then we have X-Men Apocalypse. X-Men Apocalypse, again, was considered by the critics to be a pretty poor movie. I mean, it was panned. It got, what, a 44% on Rotten Tomatoes, which means it was rotten. But the general audience, again, enjoyed X-Men Apocalypse. This is one of those blockbuster movies that the critics panned, and we still are scratching our heads trying to figure out why it was panned. The critics did not pan Star Trek Beyond, so I'm not understanding why they panned X-Men Apocalypse. I looked at the movie. I didn't go to the cinema to see the movie. I kind of watched it illegally, which is bad. But for me, it was a pretty decent movie. There was nothing really tremendously bad about it. I liked certain parts of it. Certain parts of it, again, we could see the CGI. It was pretty good CGI work, though. And I enjoyed it for the most part. So I'm not quite sure. Something like Batman v Superman, they panned a movie because they particularly didn't like it, but the audience liked it. And so that's what you get with X-Men Apocalypse. Remember, the thing that counts, ladies and gentlemen, is not the critics, it's the audience. If you want to go and get an Academy Award, okay, the critics can like it. These movies are not out there, summer movies are not out there to get Academy Awards, okay? But anyway, X-Men Apocalypse did decently well. I think it is the second highest box office growth for the X-Men franchise, which is pretty good. I thought it was a decent movie, and I guess its box office showed that. Suicide Squad. Well, Suicide Squad just keeps on doing its thing. It's currently made back its money already. It was supposed to make 350 million to break even according to its production budget, and we assume its advertising costs. I don't know if the production budget is inflated from that amount, or that amount takes into account the extra money that was put into production. I'm believing this amount you see here is taking into account the extra money that was taken in to do some more action scenes in production. There are a lot of rumors that circulated, and most of them are not true, like Jared Leto not wanting to be the Joker, or he's cursing out Warner Brothers. It wasn't that at all. And you can go online and check out the clarifications on those things. Also, they're talking about putting more humor into Suicide Squad. No, that humor was there from way back since last year. If you go and look at all those trailers from last year, even the trailers from early this year, the humor has always been there. You saw Harley Quinn, even in the very first trailer, talking about killing everybody. So it's not like the humor wasn't in the movie. what people don't understand is that they got extra shoots to do more action sequences. But even so, according to the cast, not even those action sequences remained in the final cut. A lot of those action sequences didn't even make the final cut. So it's just where, you have a director who wants to do more and more and more and more with the movie. And what you have to understand is Suicide Squad is an introduction to the Suicide Squad. It's not a Joker movie. It's not about trying to be belaboring and go into a whole ton of backstory. It was just enough backstory you needed to know. You will see these characters again if you want to see them again, or you're thirsting for more. And what people don't realize is, yes, I agree, the advertising sort of hyped up the movie a lot, so that some people expected something else besides what the Suicide Squad is really about. But at the end of the day, if you're wanting to see more of these characters, if you want to see more of the movie, your imagination is open, it means obviously they did their job with the Suicide Squad. It's supposed to introduce you to this squad in this world. That was the major purpose of the Suicide Squad, which was excellently done. And people are so negative that they don't realize they want to see more of this squad. They want to see Suicide Squad 2. And clearly that is depicted by the box office numbers, and this isn't done yet. Far cry from being finished. Suicide Squad is is going to do some things. It's already breaking records in the month of August, like Batman v Superman did in the month of May. And people are not remembering these things. They're trying to always bad talk Batman v Superman. But bit by bit, the DCEU is shaping up, and people are seeing what it really is. People have to get accustomed to the DCEU, the creativity of the directors, the creativity of how they decide to do their editing, how they decide to do things. It's very artistic. And people are going to get used to the DCEU, and they're really going to appreciate it for what it is. The only thing I would say to the DCEU is this. Guys, your marketing campaign, you got to tone it down a bit. Don't show everything. Like, especially just a few days before the movie comes out, you guys show everything. Don't do that. Don't spoil the movie. Just show bits and pieces to get people interested, and let them go into the movie and see the movie and really get blown away. Wonder Woman's coming up. Don't show anything more. You already showed a trailer with a lot of action from Wonder Woman. A lot of things that blew people's minds. Keep that trailer all the way down to the end. Don't show anything extra. Spare us having to see anything more about Wonder Woman. Keep on rehashing the trailer. This is what Captain America Civil War did. And keep it to a minimum. Even 2-3 days before the movie comes out, you can show a little snippet, and that's it. And when the movie's now being shown in the cinemas, when it's being shown, people going through 2-3 weeks, you show little extra things, because people have already seen the movie. So that's how you do it. You don't go just blowing your load in your advertising. That's the problem with these ads. The trailers are interesting, they're fun and everything, but then you kind of spoil the whole entire movie. That's what BVS did. That's what Suicide Squad did in their final week before the movie came out. I don't care what the critics think. By now, people are beginning to realize when it comes to the DCEU, critics are biased against it. So we get that. So we're not expecting a great critical review. If it comes, that'll be a great shock and a surprise. What we're really interested in is that you preserve the story, so when we actually see the story on the screen, we get a lot more. That's what people wanted to see. So that's what I'm hoping for. How you edit your movies, that's up to you, Warner Brothers. I would say like with Zack Snyder, I'm pretty sure the Ultimate Cut was a better, superior cut to the theatrical in many respects. And so I would prefer to have had the Ultimate Cut. In the case of Suicide Squad, I am pretty sure, even though David Ayer did some excellent work, I think he would agree, like myself, that this particular version of the Suicide Squad was the version for the screen. Patty Jenkins is going to come out with Wonder Woman. It's going to be a different feel to Suicide Squad, to Batman v Superman, to Man of Steel. I know it's going to be a different feel. I already know that, because Wonder Woman exhibits different values. And since Patty Jenkins finished her shooting and everything, I think it's completely in her hands. I think Warner Bros. Need to trust Patty Jenkins to the nth degree with this, and also Jeff Johns, who also helped to write the script. And I think they're going to put together something really beautiful. And I'm hoping finally we get one director who gets to, you can see almost their complete vision on the screen. Hopefully, more or less. I know Warner Brothers will still have to tweak. They will have to have screening audiences and all of that stuff. And if they have screened it already, great. But I'm hoping that happens. I really don't care what the critical reviews are. When it comes to critics understanding what WBDC is doing on the big screen, they don't have an idea. They don't have a clue. So I don't really care about critical reviews anymore to certify. If they say great, it doesn't really mean anything to me. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Patty Jenkins brings to the screen with Wonder Woman next year. But that's what I got to say to Warner Brothers. Just be careful with your advertising. Your advertising hypes up people. Yes, a lot of people stormed it, but you can't cry wolf. This is now the third time you've cried wolf. You did an excellent job with the advertising for Man of Steel. But Man of Steel was a great movie, actually. I enjoyed it a lot. I went to the cinema because of the advertising. One particular thing in Man of Steel was when he said, "It's not an S. On my planet means hope." That was just awesome. I knew this was going to be a different kind of Superman. At first, when I saw Superman in the ad, I was like, oh God, not another Brian Roth, not another Christopher Reeves. And then I got this Superman. And I'm telling you, Henry Cavill is an awesome Superman. I can go with this Superman forever. And for those people who are kind of hung up on Christopher Reeve's version of Superman, too bad for them. I dig this Superman. I dig Ben Affleck as Batman. Ben Affleck is the Batman. It used to be an excellent job, by the way. It used to be Kevin. I forgot his name. Michael Keaton. It used to be Michael Keaton, and he's an excellent actor, by the way. He started off as a comedian. But Ben Affleck really takes it for Batman for me. His voice and everything about him, and he's so much stronger and everything. And then now I'm looking at Wonder Woman, and Gal Gadot is Wonder Woman for me. So I'm just harping on this a little bit longer for Suicide Squad. Now, the number one movie that's probably going to have swept the whole summer and was the summer flick of the year is Captain America Civil War. Okay? The difference between this movie and all the other movies is the critical reviews of it. If Suicide Squad got great critical reviews, I truly believe that Suicide Squad would have cracked $1 billion easy. I know this sounds crazy, but I do believe there was a concerted effort to tear down Suicide Squad. Captain America Civil War got every single positive report you could get for it. And all it could make is $1.1 billion. It did not equal Avengers Age of Ultron numbers. It did not equal Avengers numbers. Which, as I said before, when it comes to Marvel Disney, they have capped off. They have reached their peak, and they're on a downhill slope now. They can't go any higher. Okay? The Transformers franchise, which is Paramount Universal, they are doing their own thing. Transformers have hit a cap, and they're maintaining, but they're going downhill as well. The reason is because at a certain point in time, people get tired of franchises which give you formulas. The novelty of the formula and franchise wears off, and you can bring new character after new character after new character. You're not going to stimulate the audience because they've seen that already. One of the critiques of Suicide Squad was that it seemed to be conforming to a formulaic, generic story structure. It introduced new characters, but people felt it was going to go in another direction, not knowing what the Suicide Squad is all about. If they only knew what the Suicide Squad film was all about, maybe they wouldn't have been so hard on it. But the point being, formula. Suicide Squad, though, in its storytelling is not formulaic, which is why it will always have people gravitating towards it. It's not a pile of crap like Deadpool. Deadpool is what we call a spoofs movie. People wanted to see Deadpool because he breaks the fourth wall. He talks a lot of shit. It's violent. He's the merc with the mouth. That's what people went to watch Deadpool for. And that's what it was. It was action and it was comedy. Suicide Squad's not that. Suicide Squad's a story being told. But it is backed up and enriched with the characters, showing you dimensions of these characters that you are not used to seeing. For people who don't know much about bad guys in the DC lore, for them, this was also very interesting. So this movie appealed to both people who don't know anything about the comics and people who knew about the comics, still staying corely true to the comics. That's why John Ostrander, the creator of the Suicide Squad, was so amused and very interested in the Suicide Squad and how it was portrayed. And he loved it because the core of what the Suicide Squad is was brought out. It's all about the characters of the Suicide Squad. It's not about the mission. It's about the characters. And that was well introduced. And the mission wasn't... It was, if you think about it now, people, if you really think about it, they're talking about trial run. That was a trial run mission for the Suicide Squad from Amanda Waller's perspective. Now, you guys don't understand what I'm saying because you don't know. For those of you who watch the Suicide Squad, you would not know that the real villain of the Suicide Squad is Amanda Waller. She's the villain of the Suicide Squad. And this will be proven in time for those of you who don't understand. It's not because I know DC lore, it's just because I also know and watched how the character was conducting itself in the Suicide Squad movie. Okay? So that's the real villain. And again, like Lex Luthor, she thinks a couple steps ahead. And if something changes, she rolls with the punches. And she still works her thing. And she's working her stuff, man. And I'll tell you more about the character Amanda Waller from the Suicide Squad movie and how much she is a villain in that movie. But let's go back to what I'm saying about the summer blockbusters. I just want to say that a lot of the summer blockbusters this summer, and we looked forward to a year of comic book movies, and we got it. As comic book fans, we got a ton of comic book movies. And again, I thought Captain America Civil War was a good movie. Just because you have plot holes and you have flaws, but it has great illustrations of the characters. It did not have a strong villain. It still had my interest throughout the movie, even though some of the premises of the movie are never carried out. The movie's still about, again, the Avengers. This movie is an Avenger movie, and it basically centers around Captain America trying to save Bucky because Bucky, and he has a history with Bucky. And that's the essence of Captain America Civil War. It's a very simple storyline when you think about it. Suicide Squad, the essence of this movie, Suicide Squad, is that we have a set of villains who are sent out on a mission, but in doing so, they find a common ground, a commonality between them. Not only with themselves as villains, but they also find a commonality with the leader of the squad, two non-villains of the squad, Katana and General Flag, Rick Flag. In so doing, one of them sacrifices his life for the members of the squad, and not only did one of the criminals do that, but also one of the members of Colonel Rick Flag's team also sacrificed his life for the squad. The lieutenant, Colonel Rick Flag's lieutenant, sacrificed it for the squad to get the objective done. And of course, this is very similar to Captain America Civil War. And I try to explain to people, this movie is nothing like Guardians of the Galaxy. This is more like a Captain America Civil War movie, even the Winter Soldier movie, because it has so much in common with those. Is it a forgettable movie? Yes. Like Captain America Civil War, it's a forgettable movie. It's very simple, but you will not forget the characters. You see what I'm saying? The mission, you'll forget. The characters, you won't forget. I don't remember the story for the Winter Soldier, but I remember Bucky. I remember Captain America. You see what I'm saying? Because it was a principal dynamic. At first, the Winter Soldier was against Captain America, and I remember him changing and turning and Captain America reaching him. So you have to understand, that's the critical part that's memorable. With this, I'm going to remember the characters. I'm not going to remember Suicide Squad story. I'm not going to remember it. I'm not going to. It's a forgettable story, right? Generic, forgettable plot. But the circumstances which brought the squad together so that you had people changing their opinions of each other is what's so interesting. And of course, the bonds that are formed, I wouldn't call it friendship per se, but the bonds formed between the members of the squad, the common bond between all of them, I'm talking including Rick Flag, including Katana, that bond, because of their backgrounds, that commonality is what was able to draw them together to combat the big baddie, which was Enchantress. And I thought Enchantress was pretty well done. Don't get me wrong. Certain parts were rushed when it comes to the villain's role in the story. But more or less, again, like Captain America Civil War, to me, it's much more complex villain than even Zemo, who didn't really effectively do anything. That doesn't make a movie a bad movie because you have a weak villain. Obviously, Enchantress was a weak villain. Obviously, Zemo was a weak villain. Okay? When we look at X-Men Apocalypse, Apocalypse himself, he wasn't a bad villain, but he wasn't a strong villain. Okay? Independence Day, generic villains. Generic villains. Come on. There's no villain in this movie, really. They're weak villains, right? Ghostbusters, weak villain, right? Kind of similar storyline to Suicide Squad in that one of them becomes the villain. Star Trek Beyond, not a particularly strong villain. I wouldn't call it weak. It wasn't weak like Zemo or weak like Enchantress, but it wasn't a particularly strong villain, right? And Ben-Hur, well, Ben-Hur doesn't really have a villain, but it's an interesting story, right? And my point is, these blockbusters don't really have strong villains. The strongest villain we've had for this year, it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. Lex Luthor was a strong villain. No. He wasn't strong. Sorry. He was an okay villain. Let's put it that way. He wasn't a strong villain because a strong villain, you must be able to sort of identify with them, and yet you can hate them, but you love to hate them. That's a strong villain. Lex Luthor, you were repulsed by him. You didn't fully understand him, where he was coming from. And so that didn't make him strong. But he was a decent villain. He was like X-Men Apocalypse. Oh no, I think X-Men Apocalypse villain is actually a little stronger than Lex Luthor's villain. Even though Lex Luthor's villain is much more complex than Apocalypse. Okay, Apocalypse is more straightforward, but you at least knew where he was coming from. Yeah. So we didn't really have any strong villains this year. Deadpool. Come on, I hate that movie. That's a stupid movie. I didn't even watch it. I didn't bother to watch it. I had a pass on that. For those people who are Deadpool fans, I get it. You got to see Deadpool on the screen. You know what's the funny thing about these critics and these people? They talk about fanboys. Deadpool is a movie that fanboys wanted to see. That's why Deadpool even ended up on the screen. And the fanboys, all they were dying to see was a merc with a mouth. That's it. Deadpool is nothing else. There's no story. There's no plot. There's a little plot. He got sick. He became Deadpool, so you know his origins by being cured. And then that's about it. I mean, the rest of the movie is just spoofs. Comedy action. Okay, fine. But that's it for Deadpool. Deadpool has nothing to offer you. Nothing. They're talking about, oh, you need to be yourself. And like, get the hell out of here. It's a stupid movie. But fans wanted it. That's fanboys. So when I hear critics talk about fanboys, Deadpool was a fanboy-driven movie. It was done to please the fans and do it the right way. That was all it was, right? So when a critic starts to talk about fanboys as if they're not a fanboy themselves, is one of the saddest things in the world. I want people to judge movies based on what the movie's saying and does it accomplish what it says. That's it. I personally don't like Deadpool because I personally don't like those kinds of movies, which have nothing, more or less nothing in them, right? But did Deadpool accomplish what it set out to do? Absolutely. So you cannot call the movie a bad movie. You can't. I personally don't like the movie. I have to separate my dislike of a movie from it being bad or good. And that's the problem with these people. They say, oh, I hate Suicide Squad. So it was a bad movie. It was a horribly shot movie. It was a horribly edited movie. It was Shut up. You're talking off of feelings. You need to analyze the movie for what it is. Star Trek Beyond. Was it a good movie? Was it a bad movie? Well, most people were not interested in Star Trek Beyond. Okay, it's just what it is. They weren't interested enough, so it was a box office flop. Was it a bad movie? I don't know. I didn't go see it. All right, it was overshadowed by other movies, possibly. That happens sometimes. Okay, it was supposed to be a box office hit. It didn't do that. It was a box office flop. People probably went to see Captain America: Civil War. Who knows? Ghostbusters. Please don't tell me that was a good movie, because I know it was a bad movie. I saw it. Okay, it sucked. Okay. Now, was it well shot? Was it well edited and so on? Sort of, kind of. But that's not what makes it a good movie or a bad movie. You have a lot of movies that are shot well, that have good cinematography, but the acting is poor, or the screenwriting is poor. And it wasn't the screenwriting or the acting that was the problem in this movie. It was just the beats of the movie. It landed on its beats, but the beats were not good. It wasn't the screenwriting. No, it was just poor. The storytelling was poor. It was a poor movie. It's just what it is. And for people who think that you have to have great screenwriting, great film, no. A movie has to appeal to something. It has to be relatable to someone. It has to be something where the audience receives it. And a lot of times critics use certain criteria, and sometimes they can check off the checkbox. Yeah, just admit that, admit that, admit that. And the audience still feels distant from the movie. They are repulsed by the movie. It's just what happens. So a good movie is not one in which has great cinematography and so on. No, it's a good movie causes the audience to be drawn into it, to follow it, and finally, most importantly, it must have something that the audience identifies with, even if it's something that the audience has seen 750 billion times. Some people use formulas, some people use different. This was a formula that went wrong. Okay. Independence Day. It made its money. Fine. Was it a good movie or was it a bad movie? Well, box office doesn't always dictate a good movie, but this is a blockbuster. And take it for what you may. You can look at the performances of other Independence Day movies. It's another remake. Did it make as much money as it wanted to? No. So, is it a flop? No. Was it a bad movie? I don't know. I didn't go see it. But I can tell you this. I wasn't going to watch... the first Independence Day, I didn't go and watch in the cinemas because it was aliens invading the Earth. And there was nothing new or intriguing to me. I've seen... what was the movie? I can't remember. Aliens or something. I can't remember what it was. No, the day the Earth stood... Whatever it is. And I knew it was going to be one of those. I'm not interested in that. I already read George Orwell's book. I don't need it, So that never appealed to me. Okay, period. X-Men Apocalypse. It kind of have an intrigue to me. I wanted to go in the cinemas and see it. I just never got around to it. Mainly because Magneto's in there. Professor X is in there. And once you got those two and that beautiful dynamic from those two actors, I would have wanted to see it. Just for that reason. Did okay at the box office. In spite of critical panning. And my point again is, some of these critics, well, a lot of us already know, some of these critics don't know about movies. We get it. One of the things though is, if you don't get what this movie is, you don't get what a movie is about, then just don't do a review on it. Don't do a review on it. If this is a genre that you're probably not, you went into the cinema, you watched, and you didn't enjoy, okay, you're probably going to say something negative about it, right? But that's not the point. The point is, if other people like this movie and they enjoyed this movie, you cannot say it's a bad movie. That's the problem with these critics. They come from a very subjective opinion. There's no objectivity to it. You have to be objective. You have to consider that you're going in representing an audience. And that's where the critics, they constantly do it wrong. When you go in to look at critical reviews, Rotten Tomatoes, wherever, a person is going in to see what movies I would like to see. I'm not interested in picking out a critic here that thinks like me. I don't want that. I want somebody who can give me a semi-scientific way of looking at movies. When you're paid to do something, then you should do it right. Okay? And then when these critics go now and they spread all this negativity in the media, oh, this movie's terrible, because they're the ones that write the media pieces for the films. They're the ones that are invited by the studios to go see the production of their films. These are the people. So when you've seen all the entire process and you know the background and all of that, and you go and you pan a movie and then everybody else likes it, all the other people, the audience goes and enjoys it, you look stupid because you're not giving right direction. You have to divorce yourself not only from your personal feelings of how you think a movie makes you feel, and you have to think about the general consensus of how people would receive this movie as an audience. Because you are supposed to be someone that a member of the audience, a prospective audience, would go and get your advice on how this movie is so they can go see it. So you have to have a level of objectivity. And you cannot just go by cinematography, acting, directors, how the direction of the film is, the editing. You cannot just go by those things. You have to pay attention to elements that appeal to the general audience. Would the general audience like this? You have to consider also the season and the occasion that people are dealing with. Because sometimes these critics get too over analytical about something that's not supposed to be overly analytical. Because they have been preconditioned to think, okay, this studio does these kinds of films. So when a movie comes out that is not like them, because DC, this Suicide Squad film is a totally different DC film to Batman v Superman and Man of Steel in the DCEU. This is a different kind of film. It has a different feel, it has a different appearance, it has a different attitude. It's supposed to be that way. And if you think about it, if you're going to do a film on villains and have people identify with the villains, you have to put in humor. You have to. Because that's what villains do. They laugh a lot. If you notice, Doomsday laughed a lot when he was getting away. They have to. A villain must have a sense of humor. They must. Why? Deadshot has a sense of humor. Harley Quinn has a sense of humor. Joker has a sense of humor. They have to. It's twisted, it's warped, it's sick, but they have to. That's how they cope. So, Suicide Squad was always going to have humor. Alright? How it was cut and edited for the final cut, fine. So all I'm saying to people is, you have to look at that. The critics didn't, I don't know, they probably knew about the pre-production, whatever, and they decided to make a hoopla about it, you know, because they wanted to have some negative press to kind of suppress Suicide Squad, because I know Suicide Squad without their negative input would make even more money than it's making now. Right? And that's what Warner Brothers has to deal with, but still. You don't go trying to bash a movie because you have the power of the pen. You don't do that. You must stay reliable. Right now, the critics look unreliable when it comes to DC films. Nobody's going to care what the critics say about Wonder Woman. People are just going to go see it. It's going to make a heap of money. It doesn't matter if the critics bash it. They can do whatever they want in the media. People are going to watch the movie and then they're going to see it and then they're going to say, oh, the critics are liars. And even if the critics want to go along with it and say, oh, yes, it was a great movie, nobody cares. No one will care the next time around. No one will care what they say about Justice League. They could go praise Wonder Woman and bash Justice League. Everybody knows that. So no one will care what the critics have to say anymore because they've proven themselves to be biased and unreliable. And when they jump into line and they decide to kiss DC's foot, you know, and Warner Brothers' foot, because all the movies are now the kind of movies we want to see, nobody will care. Nobody will care what they say because you bashed a very good film in Batman v Superman. It was a solid film. And it's proven by the numbers, the box office. You can say it underperformed or how much you want. It's still, in spite of all, we talking about monumental hate was put towards Batman v Superman. Monumental hate. He survived all that and still made $872 million. and change, because it's like a billion. It made $1 billion when you include the DVD sales. It's made $1 billion anyway. So the whole point is, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, Warner Brothers is going to make their money, and that's never going to be the issue. The issue is always going to be because they have creativity. All of these directors, they allow them to do creative things. And it's the variation, it's the creativity that makes Warner Brothers DC a threat to everyone in the business. Right? You see Marvel now, they're trying to push off with Doctor Strange because they're trying to do something different. Okay? And that's good for them. Hoopy-da. They'll need that to survive. Competition's always good. Warner Brothers has made Marvel have to step up their game, and that's good. I'm not against Marvel. Okay? Captain America Civil War, I didn't pay a penny to go see that movie because I did not like how the critics treat Batman v Superman. I didn't like the anti-DC agenda, Warner Brothers agenda. It was too dirty, and they're playing it dirty. They did it to X-Men Apocalypse as well. Dirty. That's why I'm not going to watch any Marvel Disney film for this year and probably even next year. I'm not paying any money to go see those films. I'm sorry. That's just the way how I feel. Anyway, you guys have a great one.